What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Wednesday, March 8th, 2017, hump day, middle of the weekday, starting that long, slow glide down to Pow on a Friday and another crazy weekend. And I got to tell you, times are so crazy right now, I don't think in my entire life have I ever seen politics and media quite so chaotic as they are here right now. We have a lot of stuff to talk about today. I don't know how many phone calls I'm going to be able to take. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Sam is sitting in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, and ready to answer the phone when you call on in. And you probably have noticed that the sound quality on the RBN streams is back to normal. The hardworking engineers just tore the place apart last night, and they found the problem. So things should be back to normal, and hopefully we will not lose our internet connection again today to whomever was playing such games or whatever was going on. So getting into the news here, I mean, at this point, following the WikiLeaks revelations, every conspiracy theorist in America has now been vindicated about how the government is using all your appliances to spy on you, and they've backdoored everything and planted malware on everything. And it was funny, I was doing another radio show last night where that was a big topic of discussion, where everybody's saying, you know, oh man, we're getting all these emails from people we knew years ago, and they were saying, wow, we thought you were just this wacko banana paranoid tinfoil hat guy, and it turns out you're right. All of our appliances have been turned against us by the government, and worse, they've deliberately they've paid companies to leave back doors open, which the cyber criminals are able to find. Now, the CIA is trying to recover from this by saying, well, we're not doing bulk blanket mass surveillance of everybody. We're really only using this to target a few individuals we think are really bad. Well, so what you're telling us is you opened up 300 million American computer users to ransomware, viruses, all of this stuff, to no real purpose at all, is what the CIA is trying to say to cover their embarrassment over this whole situation. Yes, we've made you completely vulnerable to the criminals, and we didn't really have a good reason to do it because you're not doing anything wrong, but that's your government in action right now. Edward Snowden, of course, is weighing in on this, and he's saying that from the language inside these documents, they look authentic to him. This is not being made up. And at this point, the CIA is not actually denying that these are authentic internal documents. They're just trying to explain it away and say, look, it was really necessary, you know, evil people watch Samsung TVs, and therefore we're justified in doing all of this nonsense. And what's really kind of amazing, Snowden is also saying, and obviously we agree, that the revelations show that the U.S. government and the CIA are reckless beyond words for a number of reasons, including absolute violation of the Fourth Amendment, and the fact that they did deliberately weaken the security of Americans' computers for their convenience if it should become necessary somewhere down the road. That's their entire rationale. Yes, we've made you vulnerable to all the cyber criminals and credit card thieves and the rest of it, but it was necessary so that we can go after the real criminals and terrorists. And I wish to point out, if you go back to that article, Rivero challenges the NSA. I proved in those 6 code challenges the real criminals and the real terrorists are immune to spying. They can create their own systems of encryption. The NSA cannot break, period, end of discussion. Speaking of which, of course, the revelations confirm CIA does, in fact, get around Signal, Telegram, and WhatsApp and confide encryption. Everybody's out there saying, well, it's really strong encryption. They have a way to get around it, and it could be as simple as having the key embedded in the message. That's what they did when the data encryption standard first came on out, and it turned out your encryption key was included in the message, re-encrypted with a key only the NSA had. Remember the big stink over Microsoft's encryption infrastructure? And somebody put out a beta release and didn't strip the symbol table information, and they found an NSA key in that, found an NSA key in Windows 2000, found similar things in the Macintosh operating system. Remember when they came out with the Clipper chip? Same exact thing. Clipper was supposed to be this privacy guaranteeing system where when the key that you used was broken into and placed in escrow with two different agencies, which would require the paperwork to get the key, reassemble the key, and then decode your message. And then it turned out your entire key was included in your encrypted message, encrypted in a key that only the NSA had. They lie, they cheat, they steal. This is what they do. And they have left America's businesses, the businesses who rely on computers and encryption, are wide open to cyber crime. Just because we might want to go after a real criminal or a real terrorist, even though we already know we couldn't read any encryption they create for themselves. Does this make any kind of sense to anybody at all? We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network here. Wall Street Journal is out there saying the revelations of the WikiLeaks Vault 7 dump are far more significant than the leaks of Edward Snowden. Edward Snowden basically described what was going on, and he provided internal documents and slides and presentations. WikiLeaks is putting out the actual mechanism, and WikiLeaks is saying the 8,000 pages that have been released so far represent just 1% of what they have. In other words, somebody got a million pages, almost a million pages, of the crown jewels of the CIA's spying technology and leaked it. Needless to say, the FBI is out there, hunting for the source of these CIA documents. Couldn't be bothered with Hillary Clinton possibly selling secrets to foreign governments in exchange for donations to her charitable foundation. But by golly, we're going to get those whistleblowers. We are going to get those whistleblowers. Now, there's a lot of stuff going back and forth with regard to WikiLeaks and Vault 7. So basically, here is what we have so far. People are still going through the documents here. There was one program called Weeping Angel. It's named for one of the villains in the Doctor Who TV series. This was the system that infects smart TVs. And in particular, they seem to be targeting Samsung TVs, which have the voice-activated control, where you can sit there and talk to your TV, and the TV goes, I know, I know, I know, and changes your channels and activates certain things. And we can assume that probably all these other voice-activated things like Amazon and Google are probably doing exactly the same thing. The Weeping Angel software, when you turn off your TV, it will go through all the process of turning off the screen and changing the light, but the TV is not really off. It is still listening to the room, making recordings and sending them back to the CIA. And apparently the reason it got the name Weeping Angel, this particular piece of code was jointly developed with Britain's MI5, whom I assume are all big Doctor Who fans over there. Then there is the Umbrage program. We mentioned this one the other day. And this is the program by which the CIA has stolen copies of hacking tools from other governments in order to go on out and hack systems and leave a false trail pointing to them, primarily Russia. So any of these articles that say, we found Russian fingerprints on these hacks, it's a frame-up. It's a joke. A really expert hack does not leave a trace. If they're finding fingerprints that point at somebody, it's a frame-up job. Period. End of discussion here. Apparently, the Vault 7 documents included classified manuals for the CIA malware to get into Windows, iOS, various flavors of Linux. They know how to get into every single one of them. And again, all of these operating systems are backdoored. I remember a while back when there was a Linux conference, and one of the key figures in the development of Linux for consumer use was asked at a conference, has the NSA backdoored Linux? And he said no to the microphone at the same time he was nodding his head yes, sending a little message there. Another revelation out of the WikiLeaks dump, smart cars. The CIA has developed tools that will hack into and control smart cars. If you're driving a car that has Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or a cell phone connection and it's got automated parking, they can grab that car and steer it into a tree. And a lot of people are thinking this explains the very strange circumstances around the death of Michael Hastings, who was writing a story about Democratic spying on their opponents when his car just all of a sudden accelerated to top speed and swerved into a tree. And just before he died, Hastings had been telling his friends he was being followed, he was afraid for his life because of what he had found in terms of this massive spy operation by the Democrats against the American people, presumably their political opponents as well. CIA has hacked into Androids and iPhones, and apparently the Android malware, they actually lost control of it. Somebody leaked it out onto the darknet. Same thing had happened to the NSA. The cyber criminals now have the same tools that the government does. And that's why cybercrime is completely out of control right now. Apparently, the CIA has a collection of zero-day vulnerabilities in Android phones ready to use at a moment's notice. Now, if you're out on the dark web and you're a hacker and you find a zero-day exploit, that's worth a lot of money. You can get $250,000 for a zero-day exploit. Now, what they mean by zero-day is nobody's seen it before. Nobody's had any time to counter it or patch it. A zero-day exploit is guaranteed to basically go on out and do what you want it to do until somebody has enough time to come up with a counter to it. And that's why zero-day exploits are worth so much money to the cyber criminals here. As we mentioned a little bit before, the WikiLeaks Vault 7 documents confirm CIA gets around Signal, Telegram, WhatsApp, and Confide encryptions. In fact, at this point, I would say any encryption that's available commercially, off the shelf, downloaded from the Internet, has already been compromised. If you need to keep your secrets, use the code snippets from my article on Rivero Challenges the NSA. Don't just copy them, because obviously the NSA has them now. But use them to learn how to put together your own encryption. Because that's the only way you're going to be able to secure your business plans, your investment plan, the new product idea that you have from the government. And don't think because you're just involved in developing a new product that you're safe. Remember that big stink up at the Seattle Asia Pacific Economic Conference where it turned out U.S. government agents were breaking into the computers of conference attendees and stealing business secrets to give to Bill Clinton's cronies. Apparently, if you're using Skype, which I'm doing right now to send this show to Republic Broadcasting, your voice conversations are converted into text in real time and scanned for content of interest and stored in the CIA spy cloud. So, anthrax, nuclear weapons, Allah Akbar, Aloha snack bar, terrorism, nuclear weapons, assassination. That ought to wake them up. And, of course, we reported on this one yesterday that the CIA has holes in all of the major antivirus programs as well as the operating systems. They've made it wide open. And the CIA is saying that for the vast majority of Americans, they're not really looking at you, but what it means is your security for your business computer, your home computer, all of it has been crippled and made vulnerable to cybercrime just because the CIA thinks they want to look at maybe some real criminals and real terrorists, even though if those real criminals and real terrorists are coming up with their own encryption, the NSA and CIA can't do a thing about it. They cannot break a newly created code, especially one with an exceptionally long key. Now, getting on back to this story, the CIA has stolen computer spying techniques from Russia in order to allow it to carry out false flag attacks, which fool the victims into thinking they've been hacked by the Kremlin. Remember when the DNC said our computers were being hacked by Russia? They wouldn't even let the FBI look at them. Just take our word for it. It's the Russians. Their fingerprints are all over it. We found vodka and borscht splashed all over the keyboards. And that's how ridiculous it was just getting out there. So what we're basically coming down to is the so-called Russian election hackers more than likely are working in Langley, Virginia. That's what's going on here. It was going to be a false flag. They were going to frame Russia for rigging the election, just like they lied to you about torpedoes in the Gulf of Tonkin and a Spanish mine in Havana Harbor and Saddam's nuclear weapons and Assad's sarin gas. And how many more times are you going to have to be lied to by this government before you decide you will not live under a government that lies to you? That is the question. Now, over at WhatReallyHappened.com, we did post a link to the very last article written by Michael Hastings before his suspicious death. And the article was titled, Why Democrats Love to Spy on Americans. And you should take a look at that. He was on to something. He was on to something major with that. All right, we're going to go ahead and take a phone call here. Steve in California, thank you for waiting. What's on your mind today?
Well, I sent you an email today on this whole thing with the Women's March today. I was kind of curious where that all originated from because they seem to pop up a new one all the time. But I think we all appreciate women, and I'm just trying to figure out the source, where that all started from.
It's coming out of this militant feminist, keep the men and women angry with each other. But the reason they keep coming up with a new Women's March, Women's Day off is because they're not getting any traction from any of these things. And even worse, people are making fun of it. You know, and we even posted a link to an article with humorous tweets that were coming on back and saying, well, you know, thank goodness the Women's March isn't affecting the topless bars.
Right. Hey, last question. Did you ever locate that Russian dressing yet in your grocery store? Because I pointed it out to my wife last night, and she said, I can't believe you're right.
You know, I forgot to look. Dressing. We were at the market the other day, and I absolutely forgot to look. But I'll tell you what, I'll make a point this afternoon. I have to go out and run errands as soon as the show is over. I will go down and see if we do or do not have Russian dressing in our local supermarket. But given that it's Safeway and they don't carry a lot of variety of anything, they don't even carry pickle and pimento loaf or olive loaf anymore, they might not have Russian dressing, and it might just be because they figured it's not going to sell well enough in Hawaii to make it worth their while. But I'll take a look.
Okay, thanks. See you.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. Now, this scandal about the CIA is starting to spread all over. It is big enough now where the corporate media is having to report on it grudgingly. And they're not even trying to say that it isn't real or it's all a hoax or anything. It's too big. It's too well documented. But they're out there trying to say, it's no big deal. If you've got nothing, if you're doing nothing wrong, you've got nothing to hide. Yeah, I do. I got a lot of stuff to hide. I got business secrets to hide. I've got love letters to Claire I want to keep personal and private. I've got my Aunt Mary's top secret chocolate chip cookie recipe I don't want anybody peeking at. I have a right to privacy guaranteed by that Fourth Amendment. And more important, I have a right to have a secure computer system on which to conduct my business without being held up by ransomware. And if you look at the scale of the ransomware problem, where we're talking about like 1/3 of large companies have already been hit by this, and most of them are having to pay. Thank you, CIA and NSA, for leaving our systems wide open for the cyber criminals. I think there ought to be a class action lawsuit by every business that has had to pay ransom to a ransomware writer and sue the CIA and the NSA for recovery of the money plus punitive damages for doing such a dumb thing, aiding and abetting cyber crime. Or misprision of cybercrime. At the very least, these people should be going to jail. We're going to take a break for some commercials, and we'll be back with more news after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to grab a quick phone call from David in Puerto Rico. David, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, Michael, I've been listening to you for some months before the elections. Our elections here in Puerto Rico were the same day as up in the States.
Mm-hmm.
And there's two subjects that I've been wanting to call you about real quickly. Number one, when you mention the arguments that are used that Israel, that they still have to possess their land, that they have the right.
Okay, David, let me cut in here for just a minute here. We're talking about the revelation that the CIA has literally turned all of our appliances into spies against the American people. We're talking about a new, more serious Watergate in which President Obama was bugging President Trump, and all of a sudden you want to come in and start talking about why God gave Israel to the Hebrew people here. I think maybe you should call back much later in the show, like maybe 2 or 3 years from now, and we're going to let you go. This is another example of how the people who are trying to keep this story from going on out are having shills call into a show to try and take it off topic, take it off focus, get them talking about something else. Plus, my mailbox is full of emails about, HARP and UFOs and the Hollow Earth and Planet Nibiru and all this other stuff. You can almost smell the panic coming out of the establishment elite. They're in serious trouble, they know it, and they don't know what to do. So they keep on playing the games that worked back in the 1950s and 1960s and don't realize it's a different world today. Now, getting back to the present moment and what is important, Germany's chief prosecutor is now going to be looking into these WikiLeaks documents that are just now being dumped. Because, as you know, one of the areas in which President Obama was in fact spying on other people was they hacked into Angela Merkel's cell phone for a long period of time. And Angela is still not in a forgiving mood about that. And I can imagine probably all these other countries around the world are going to be looking very closely at this. They certainly were looking very closely when Edward Snowden blew the whistle on the NSA, and now somebody has blown the whistle big time on the CIA, and everybody's going to be very, very upset over the fact that their privacy has been violated by the United States government. Okay, apparently some of these documents, we were talking about how the Samsung TVs would record your voice and send it in for analysis, how Skype, your communication is translated into text in real time and scanned for incriminating words, anthrax, botulism, Ebola, anything that's going to get them upset. Apparently they're doing the same thing to the iPhone conversations. And you have to know that this is certainly possible when you use Siri or any of these other voice assists, which understand what you're saying and will carry out your wishes, but at the same time, that technology can and is being used for nefarious purposes. Now, amazingly enough, BuzzFeed came on out with an announcement saying Apple has patched the vulnerabilities mentioned in the WikiLeaks dump. Apple's already come on out and said, no, in point of fact, we have not, but they don't know where BuzzFeed got that. So there's a lot of fake news already out there trying to blur this. If nothing else, try and cause so much confusion, put so much dust in the air that nobody gets a clear picture of what's going on. And we may never have the fine details of all of this, and you know something? It doesn't matter. We have the core scandal right here. And we don't need to get lured into endless discussions about minutia. The CIA and the NSA, and for that matter the FBI, are in violation of the Constitution of the United States of America. And that means everything they're doing is illegal, unconstitutional, and it delegitimizes the entire federal government. We do not have a legal, constitutional, legitimate government of this nation at this point. Very interesting article coming out of Patriot Rising. Spies, killers, thieves, liars. The CIA is the state distilled. If you want to know about any entity, you look at its worst possible examples, and here we are. We're seeing that our CIA is just as evil, if not more so, than the old KGB was. Remember when they were tarnishing Putin because he'd worked for the KGB? Well, George Herbert Walker Bush was director of the CIA, and now we know what the CIA is really like. We'll be right back after these commercials. And hello, hi America. Welcome back to our show here. I'm going to go off on a bit of a tangent for a minute because I'm getting emails from some of the liberal whiners about my Trump is my president t-shirt. It's from InfoWars, and it was sent to me as a gift. I mean, we're actually starting to get an audience right here on the island of Oahu. Claire and I are getting recognized all the time. And so some friends over in Kaneohe sent me their shirt, along with a copy of Roger Stone's new book, The Making of the President 2016. Now, I haven't read the whole thing, but I've read enough of it to know that it's a very good analysis of what happened last year. He doesn't go into the election fraud that I've found so far, but he does sum up something that I'm absolutely in agreement with. He says the reason Donald Trump won is because America was sick of the Bushes and the Clintons, because they are not on opposite sides. They're working together. I mean, George W. Bush comes on out, bashes Trump, and he's the darling of the liberal Democratic media. That tells you what's really going on. All right, we're going to go ahead and grab ourselves a phone call. Mike in Maryland, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, thanks for taking my call. For those out there who think it's far-fetched that your car or vehicle can be hacked, I would like to refer them to this. It's like a video, and I'm not sure if it's from a TV show, but it's one of those geeky, techie shows where these guys, experiment with electronics. And this gentleman and a cameraman were driving this Jeep Grand Cherokee, $50,000 vehicle with all the, gewgaws and doodads on it. And these two tech, wizards, basically took total and complete control of their Jeep Cherokee. They could steer it wherever they wanted to. They could start and stop it. They could make it do semicircles. They had the windshield wiper going, and the coup de grace was on the display, for the backup light, or for the turn signal. How you can, the cameras can spot the rear backup or the left turn lane.
Mm-hmm.
The two guys showed up on the doggone video screen. So you might find it on YouTube.
There's actually a few of those. There's actually a few of those. After Michael Hastings, let's just be honest, he was killed. After Michael Hastings was killed and this issue of remote controlling cars came up, there were some TV shows like the one you're talking about, and several university IT departments started looking into this as well, and there have been a lot of university students who've been able to do this. The only question is, how far away does somebody have to be to seize control of your car? And for those cars that actually have cell phone links, the answer is the perpetrator can be virtually anywhere as long as they can dial into your car. And the real danger is if your car has automatic parking, then that means the steering wheel is under the control of the onboard computer, and that's what really makes it dangerous. But even if you just have the close approach radar system, they can still take control of the accelerator and the brakes and do all kinds of mayhem. Whoever designed these computer systems for the cars, they really were not thinking in terms of somebody getting in there and causing a lot of damage. And it's reflective of the extreme recklessness that this whole Internet of Things is being put together with, where everybody's putting computers on stuff, and they're not really thinking about how any of this stuff can be used to ill purpose. But, yeah, there have been several of these TV shows and several actual scholarly research projects done on this very issue. There is no question it's possible.
Well, all I can say is if you're a high-profile activist against the New World Order, you need to think twice before you buy a fancy car with all those added accoutrements that make your car hackable.
Well, like I said, I'm glad I'm driving a 17-year-old Honda for that very reason, although I have to go to a special gas station to get the ethanol-free gasoline so I don't melt the fuel system. And even if I do reach a point of being able to get a newer car, GPS would be nice, but other than that, I don't want any of the bells and whistles. I don't want Bluetooth. I don't want Wi-Fi. I don't want any cell phone connections whatsoever. The problem is, because of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, you're literally not allowed to know what is inside that computer of your car, whether it actually still has a cell phone link or other capabilities. You're not allowed to know that at all. And that really makes it very, very dangerous. Because people are now finding out the cell phones they bought, the tablets they bought, the laptops, the desktop computers, even their TVs that they thought were just going to be working for them, now they're finding out all of these appliances have been turned against us by the U.S. government.
Thanks a lot. Keep up the great work. I'll see you.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. Now, as I said, the CIA is not denying that any of these documents are real. They're just trying to explain it away and say, well, we have to do this to get the bad people, and yes, it's inconvenient for you, but just go along with it. And apparently, General Michael Hayden was on Stephen Colbert's show just last night, saying that the CIA does not spy on Americans. And do you remember when James Clapper said exactly the same thing under oath before Congress following Edward Snowden's revelations about the NSA? And that turned out to be a bald-faced lie. So I don't believe anything Hayden says. I don't believe anything anybody in CIA or NSA, or for that matter the federal government as a whole, or the corporate media as a whole say. Their whole business is lying to you to get what they want, your money, your obedience, your children for their wars. That's it. That's the model right there. Now, I found this very interesting article back in 2015 where Rand Paul expressed his extreme upset that the NSA, in the course of spying on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, was spying on members of Congress. And we know that's been going on. NSA admitted they were spying on Barack Obama when he was just a senator before he became the president. And Rand Paul was, back in 2015, he's appalled this is going on. And I can understand why he's appalled, but are you seeing the double standard here? When it's politicians and the president and these important elite people and they discover they're being spied on, they're furious and they're upset. But when it's you, the American people, oh, really, you should just go along with this. If you're not doing anything wrong, then you've got nothing to worry about. It's a little bit of hypocrisy. If it's wrong to spy on a politician, it's wrong to spy on the American people. And let's be honest, once the NSA and the CIA have set up these spy systems, of course they're going to go after the politicians. They're going to try and get dirt on them to get them controlled. And this existed long before the Internet and long before electronic systems. J. Edgar Hoover was notorious for his a personal file system where he had blackmail information on everybody in the U.S. government. That's why he wound up being FBI director for life. He had the goods on everybody, including President John F. Kennedy. He was able to literally steer the U.S. government the way he thought it should go because he could blackmail everybody up to and including the President of the United States of America. And that is the danger with allowing these intelligence agencies this much latitude. You cannot let them off the leash. They will turn and bite their master. Now, of course, the good news here is this pair of scandals. Obama bugging Trump, and reinforced by the revelation that the CIA has built the bugging capability into virtually everything we own, allows Donald Trump to take the initiative against the Democrats because they've been pushing for this. We have to investigate Russia and Trump. We're investigating. We're determining the course of the political dialogue. Not anymore. Because now Trump has grounds to have the Democrats and Obama and Hillary investigated, and the House Intelligence Committee is saying, yes, we have to look at this. This is important. And of course the Democrats are just in a panic. They're how could you even think that we could do something like this? You know, the 11th commandment is only the Republicans have Richard Nixon's. Now, the other day, we were talking about how FBI Director Comey, and obviously it was a mistake for Donald Trump to keep him on, he went to the Department of Justice and asked them to just ignore Trump's claim that he was being bugged for political gain by President Obama. The Department of Justice, under the control of Jeff Sessions, has told Director Comey, we are investigating. They basically told him to go jump in the lake. And Comey, I guess, is feeling very nervous because he was at this speech here where, you know, everybody's all talking about should he quit, should he resign, should Trump fire him. And Comey actually came out with this speech at a cybersecurity conference hosted by the FBI in Boston College, and he said, you're stuck with me for another 6.5 years, which is the remainder of his 10-year appointment to the post. And that sounds like famous last words to me, because the reality is President Trump can fire him. Remember, on the very day that Vincent Foster's body was found in Fort Marcy Park, Bill Clinton was swearing in a new FBI director. He had fired the last one. The president has that authority. And I think Trump ought to fire Director Comey. I think Trump has to start really cleaning house. And now he's got the political capital to do it. Because there are a lot of people in Congress that are now saying, wow, were they spying on me? Is this how they got the blackmail information? Is this how they're going to destroy my career if I don't go along with them? More and more people are beginning to think that the main reason that FBI Director Comey allowed Hillary Clinton to walk on her listed Title 18 felony violations is because she knew about the illegal wiretapping, which is supported by tweets that she put on out and statements by other people that we're getting to. And she was blackmailing Comey, saying, if you bring charges, I will out the fact that there was a new Watergate spy operation going on against Donald Trump under your authority. All of Washington, D.C. is this Gordian knot of blackmail going back and forth, and it's strung violin string tight. All it's going to take is a couple of strings to break, and it all's going to unravel here. And, of course, the wiretaps appear to have started right after that very bizarre meeting between Loretta Lynch and Bill Clinton that everybody was wondering, oh, we just talked about our kids. That's it. Really, nothing to see here. You know, we don't do that sort of thing. That runway may have been the only place in America the CIA wasn't bugging at the time here. It's amazing here. Now, here's the good part. We understand the Intelligence Committee is going to be investigating. The Department of Justice is going to be investigating. Word is that Trump has brought on a whole new phalanx of lawyers onto the White House staff just to look at this issue. And everybody's in a panic. They know somebody's going to go to jail. The question is who? And I can tell you right now, the ones who are not going to go to jail are the ones who come forward first and make their deals. And this brings us to Hillary Clinton's former campaign manager, Robbie Mook, who basically rolled over telling Fox News that he and everyone in the Clinton campaign knew that Obama was wiretapping Trump Tower. And that was illegal for the Obama administration to convey to the Hillary Clinton campaign. And obviously, if he's sharing the fact that there's a wiretap in that they bugged Trump Tower, then obviously the next step is they were sharing intelligence. And so now you've got Hillary Clinton's own former campaign manager saying, yeah, everybody knew it was going on. And this could trigger literally a flood of Hillary associates coming forward and saying, yeah, it was going on. It's a new Watergate. We were involved. We hated it. We're going to make our deal now. Last one standing gets to go to jail. Now, Loretta Lynch herself, the paper trail is leading back to her. She signed off on this warrant application to the FISA court, which was then used to spy on Donald Trump, even though Donald Trump's name was not actually on it. And we know that that FISA warrant was based on a fake website, a fake Trump website. It was made to look like it was associated with Donald Trump, put up a bunch of stuff to make it look like he was associating with the Russians. It was a complete fraud. So Loretta Lynch basically submitted a warrant based on fraudulent information to the FISA court, and it was then granted. She could face prosecution on that one, and she should. All right, we're going to take a phone call here. Bob in Las Vegas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I wanted to thank you for the recommendation of Yandex. I've started using that now for the past few days.
Yes.
So thank you very much. I was using Bing. Is Bing affiliated with Google?
Bing is run by Microsoft, which I think is probably just as compromised as anybody else, especially going back to Windows 2000 and Windows 7 with their NSA keys. So I would say at this point, every large American computer, IT, social media company has been compromised by the CIA or the NSA or both.
Okay, good. I'm glad I'm using Yandex then. Mike, I think if ever there was a time the elite, the deep state, the shadow government needed a distraction, it would be now. And I mean a false flag, a war. You mentioned North Korea yesterday, potentially.
Oh, yeah.
US
North Korea is coming to attack us here in Hawaii. North Korea is coming to attack us here in Hawaii. Pay no attention to the CIA dumps. Pay no attention to Watergate 2. North Korea is going to attack Hawaii. There are kimchi pots flying everywhere. It's horrible.
Yeah, just, try to, I don't know, if you guys have a backyard, you can build a bunker down there in the backyard.
We have we have a very small backyard. It overlooks Pearl Harbor. If somebody nukes Pearl Harbor, we're going to find out about it 12 seconds later.
Yeah, you mentioned the U.S. is about to embark, U.S. and South Korea, on this 60-day exercise. So it's a concern. But one other thing I wanted to talk to you about, Mike, was Hawaii is in the news on this Trump's new travel ban. They say that a case could be brought in Hawaii. Have you heard anything about that?
I actually have not. I was going to say, so Trump says I can't go to the mainland U.S. I mean, that's fair. I can't order anything from the mainland right now. I was going over to Edmund Scientific trying to get a science toy for a small person whose birthday is coming on up. Edmund Scientific won't ship to Hawaii or Alaska. A lot of the people on eBay won't ship to Hawaii and Alaska. It's become such a headache here. And now I guess we're on the travel ban. Well, that's okay. I wasn't really planning on going to the mainland in the immediate future anyway. So who cares? No, I hadn't heard about this.
Yeah, because I don't know if you know Angelo Codevilla, the author and professor. He had said he wrote a book about the ruling elite. He had said that he believes this new travel ban will be overturned as well, because these judges, all they have to do is shop for a circuit. And these judges are such ideologues and extremists, they'll just overturn it.
It may well be, but again, the law is on Trump's side, and at some point I think the American people are going to start doubting the judges, and that's something they don't want to have happen. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And following up on Bob's call here, I mentioned earlier in the week, and I'm going to mention it again, a government, no matter how much it's fighting internally, various factions at war with each other, it is important to present a public face that is calm, unified, and consistent to reassure the population that government is functioning as they have been told it is supposed to function. And we're already losing that. We're seeing the faction fights breaking out into full public view. And that is the beginning of the delegitimization of the government. Now, part of that is the court system itself, because we're sort of all brainwashed into say that we will allow judges to decide and arbitrate disputes between individuals in civil cases and individuals in the government in criminal cases. And we go along with that on this faith that the guys in the robes, or gals in the robes, are being fair. But the more and more we see judges engaging in outright political activism from the bench, the less and less confident we are in the justice system as a whole that it is, in fact, acting in the best interest of the general population. It is seen as just another instrument of a tyrannical state. And that's what's going on over at the Ninth Circus Court of Appeals. Every time they come on out and they overturn Trump's executive order, even though the law gives him that authority, the court system as a whole is suffering more and more damage to its credibility. People are turning away from it. They don't believe the courts represent justice anymore. The blindfold has slipped, so to speak. By the way, Jeff Sessions has come on out and acknowledged that more than 300 people who came here as refugees are currently under investigation for potential terrorism-related activities, which is the whole point of banning travel from these nations. And the corporate media is still out there proclaiming that it is a Muslim ban. No, it isn't. It's a ban on travel from specific countries. And if you're coming from those specific countries, it doesn't matter if you are Muslim or Christian or Jewish or Pastafarian or an atheist or a Scientologist, you are going to have the same degree of difficulty getting into the United States of America, because these countries do not like our country, because our government's been bombing their country for a very long time. And nobody can have that sort of thing happen to them and remain entirely cheerful. Trump is right. and all these open border people are absolutely wrong, but they serve a higher, more noble purpose of a single global government and a human race unified in debt slavery to a single private central bank. The true believer mentality. Let's see. I know we got some callers waiting on the line, but I'm going to take them after station break because we've only got a couple of minutes left in this segment here. Apparently, a former CIA official is saying that Obama's wiretapping of Trump was his least abuse of power. And he's saying Obama needs to be sent to jail. And that would be an historic first to see a former president sent to the Huskow, but I think it's high time. So this is Larry Johnson is out there saying, yeah, nobody should be above the law in this country, even if they're a former president. I absolutely, most heartily agree. We'll be back after station identification. Hello, hi, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, and we're going to take a phone call from Peter in Los Angeles. Aloha, Peter. Welcome back to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. I absolutely agree, and I'd love to hear the specifics of why that Johnson fellow thinks that Obama should go to jail, because I do believe that this is only the tip of the iceberg with him. Remember, he used the IRS as his personal political tool. And the worst thing that he did that I can think of, that I know of, other than him murdering people like Michael Hastings and American citizens, he probably abroad for sure, here probably, is the fact that he turned over all of these intercepts, everything you see being used against Trump and all the people that are for Trump can be used against you because he turned that over to Israel. Everybody who's out there. He turned all that stuff, and they can do that to anybody, any politician, including you and me. And can you think of anything more treasonous than that?
I'm having a hard time thinking of anything worse than that. And again, there is reason to think they even used this information to blackmail the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Roberts. Because remember, when the original Obamacare was being pushed forward, it was seen as being unconstitutional, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the court had 4-4, and Chief Justice Robert was going to cast the deciding vote. He was opposed, and then all of a sudden, at the very last minute, he does a complete 180. He says it's legal under the Commerce Clause, passes it through the Supreme Court, and then he left the country for a week's vacation in Malta to duck the reporters who were going to ask him why he changed his mind. To me, that's the signature that he got coerced somehow.
Oh, I mean, all these plane crashes, all these car crashes, everything, and like I say, if the U.S. government can do it, then Israel can do it too, because we've given it all to them.
Yes, we have.
And this guy did it knowingly. He did it to get money for his own political advancement. So he sold us out to a foreign country that will do anything. And we've been involved in wars now for, 20 years, on against their enemies. And now maybe we get an idea of why.
Well,
we're at war with everybody.
Certainly Israel has been cheering on all of these wars, but one of the things you all need to remember is that these world-changing events like wars or assassinations never really happen for a single reason. That's part of the myth that's put on out. World War II was about Pearl Harbor. John F. Kennedy was killed by a crazed lone nut assassin. The reality is, when you get a group of people with their own personal agenda, but that agenda overlaps on a course of action that would benefit them, that's when that course of action is going to be followed. When you look at all the different parties who were involved in the Kennedy assassination, they all had their own reasons for doing it, but they all agreed getting rid of John F. Kennedy was going to help them. The same thing with wars. All of the various warring parties may have different reasons why they want the war, but they all agree a war is going to be a good thing. Certainly Israel wants the larger nations of the Mideast broken up into little pieces that can be bullied around. The Federal Reserve wants war against Russia and China to maintain dollar hegemonic domination of the world's economy. There's this accepted wisdom that war is good for the U.S. economy in general, and that's an absolute flat-out lie. It's great for the defense contractors, and it's great for the banks who loan us that money to fight the war at interest, but it's actually a lousy deal for ordinary Americans. And so in the case of Obama literally selling out the secrets of American citizens to Israel for whatever reason, He's hardly alone in that. And I don't think we'll ever learn the true depths of the corruption of these rulers we've had over us for the last quarter of a century. We're still trying to dig into the question of whether Hillary, as Secretary of State, was selling U.S. secrets to foreign interests in exchange for donations to her foundation. I think that's important to know. I think the American people have an inherent right to know the real nature of their rulers. But right now, well, not right now, but in the recent past, I would say that Americans have been as clueless about the true nature of their rulers as the medieval peasants were, where, God has anointed them and we must worship them, and they had no idea what was going on. Most Catholics to this day still absolutely reject the idea that Pope Alexander VI was throwing orgies inside the Vatican. They don't want to see it. They want to have that image of their rulers. Well, that image of the rulers is one of the ways you're being controlled, by convincing you that they are somehow automatically superior to you, and therefore you should just go along with what they say. And what we're finding out now, these rulers aren't more superior to us. In fact, look at some of the things that Maxine Waters and Nancy Pelosi are saying to prove that, their brains just aren't there. They're just willing to do things we are not. They're willing to lie, cheat, steal, and kill, and they think that's what makes them superior human beings, but it isn't. It just makes them human beings who are willing to lie, cheat, steal, and kill. And I think the American people need to know what's really been going on inside their government.
Mike, it's amazing to me how many people are still in denial. They really can't get their minds around just how awful it really is. They're in denial. But, and the end result, really, to coin a phrase here, this government stinks like a whorehouse at low tide.
Yes. So, yeah. I think you're mixing your metaphors, but I definitely get the idea behind that. And what's going to go on here, do you know when children reach that stage where they begin to realize their parents are not just these amazing, larger people that they're dependent on, but they begin to realize that their parents are just, children with a lot, who are a lot older, a lot larger, and they've got their own money. And that's a big part of the adolescent rebellion that you're seeing go through them. We're going to see the same thing here in the United States as the American people begin to realize what our government is really like. They're going to go through a psychic shock at realizing that our rulers really are not these amazing advanced people. I remember when Ben Carson was running in the primaries, they did a video tour of his home, and there wasn't an inch of his walls that wasn't covered with some plaque or award or testimonial, and it was just this massive ego on display for a guy who's convinced the Great Pyramids were used to store grain in.
These guys that the public has yet to unhook themselves from the matrix, but it's about to be ripped out for them.
Yes.
So,
the process has begun. There's no question the process has begun. The corporate media is losing their audience. The independent media is gaining audience. The process has begun, and there is no turning back. What's going on in the world today is a repeat of the turmoil that followed Gutenberg's rediscovery of movable type printing, and it just changed the dynamic of information flow. And those entities that could adapt and evolve to the new reality survived, and those entities that couldn't adapt and evolve went extinct. Now, unfortunately, our U.S. government is carrying a load of 200 years of lies, fraud, and deception that imprisons them. They can't start telling the truth any more than the corporate media, whose business model is lying for profit, can change what they're doing. And that is why they are headed toward extinction.
Well, hey, bless you, Mike. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates just rejoining the network, and we're going to go back to the phones to Kyle in Pennsylvania. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. One thing, I don't know if it's been brought up yet, but with this wiretapping and this hacking, you've got to also remember that a week before he left office, Barack Obama went in and changed who has access to all of these wiretaps. He went in and changed it from one organization, the NSA, to 17 organizations.
Yeah, he just opened up the sluice gates. Anything the NSA finds, they can turn over to FBI, CIA, DEA, ICE, your local police department, it's all become instruments of a tyrannical state.
The booby trap. I mean, then there's these landmines and these booby traps are laying everywhere. And because the information is so well disseminated now between all these organizations, finding out who actually has been doing, the actual listening and the actual releasing is going to be a rat's nest. So, I mean, there's just more circumstantial evidence that this was the plan the whole time. These guys have been monitoring, watching, reporting. They should all be locked up and gone to prison.
Well, you've hit the point right on the head here. Because of what Obama did, there is no element within the federal government that can claim innocence in this abuse of the Fourth Amendment. Obama basically just said, we're making them all collectively guilty. The entire federal government is involved in this illegal, unconstitutional, illegitimate behavior. And there is nobody left in the federal government that can back off and say, wait a minute, we were not part of this. Obama just took that away from them. They don't have plausible deniability.
Tomorrow night, Trump should order an executive order disbanding the CIA. Send people over there, lock the doors, don't let anybody in, and just get rid of the entire organization.
Well,
that was Kennedy's mistake.
Well,
he announced he was going to do it.
Well, no, actually, Kennedy did sign the executive order where he was going to take covert operations away from the CIA and hand it back to the Pentagon in response to being lied to over the Bay of Pigs. And Kennedy was dealing with exactly the same sort of entrenched bureaucratic establishment Trump is dealing with. People just ignored his executive order, and that's why it was never carried out. And then, of course, after Kennedy was assassinated, they ginned together that Warren Commission. And Alan Dulles, the former head of the CIA, the man that Kennedy had fired, got to run the Warren Commission covering up the assassination.
Yep. All right, Mike, well, I'll let you go.
All right, thanks an awful lot. Now then, Director Comey is making the rounds, trying to salvage his face right now, and he's basically going down this same talking point of, it doesn't really matter what we're learning about the CIA. He actually came on out and said, there is no such thing as absolute privacy in America. This is the new normal. Everything that you do is being watched. Big Brother is everywhere. It's watching you through your telescreen and listening to you on your phone, and you might as well just get used to it because that's the new reality. That's Comey's attitude. And unfortunately, it does seem to pervade the intelligence community, that there should be no privacy, even though the right to privacy is a fundamental part of that Constitution. And I want to go back to this zero-tolerance policy when it comes to that federal government. If you are not fully 100% in compliance with that Constitution and the Bill of Rights, then you are not a legal, legitimate government of this land. You are usurpers. All right, moving on here. Another article. This is from wakethechurch.org. Trump has enough political capital to destroy Big Brother. I don't know that he has enough to destroy Big Brother, but he can definitely dent it. Because the American people were already alert because of Edward Snowden, this latest WikiLeaks revelation and the promise of even more to come. Americans are realizing something has indeed gone horribly wrong with our government. It almost reminds me of the movie V for Vendetta, when the Stephen Fry character is saying, well, he's right. Something has gone horribly wrong with this country. And people are aware of that. And with members of the government itself now concerned that their privacy is being routinely violated by NSA and CIA, Trump could actually pull together a coalition to reassert that Fourth Amendment and say anybody who's violating that is fired, 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 fired. Hanged, drawn, quartered, tarred, feathered, burnt at the stake, and the ashes peed on by a rabid moose. Now, meanwhile, the Democrats are still trying to move forward to gin up an investigation into Donald Trump's links to Russia. And their star witness is going to be this former British spy, Christopher Steele, whose initial dossier about Donald Trump and two prostitutes vandalizing the presidential suite in the Moscow hotel has already been thoroughly discredited. But he's going to be the star witness. And the reason they put so much pressure on Jeff Sessions to recuse himself from this upcoming investigation, the Democrats want an independent counsel, meaning a counsel under their control, who will allow wild rumor, innuendo, hearsay to be entered and treated as if it's factual, established evidence beyond all doubt. That's what they're trying to do. But it's going to backfire on them, because it's bringing more and more attention on who really was being friends with Russia. And part of the focus is now on John Podesta. Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign manager was on the executive board of a client of Panamanian law firm Mossack Fonseca. Remember that tax avoidance thing? The Panama Papers. And that company, on which Podesta served as a board member, also received $35 million from a Putin-connected Russian government fund at the same time that then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton spearheaded the transfer of U.S. advanced technology, some with military uses, as part of her reset strategy with Russia, a repeat of the Chinagate scandal, in which sensitive technology with military application was authorized for sale to China by then President Bill Clinton, and Chinese money poured into his re-election campaign. That's what's really going on. That's who's friends with Russia. Now, Tony Podesta, who's a Democratic super lobbyist, was representing SureBank, Russia's largest bank, and failed to register as a foreign agent under the Foreign Agent Registration Act. That's who's friends with Russia. That's who's doing business with Russia. Let's just go down the list of the 5 Clinton-Russia bombshells that liberals and the corporate media do not want to hear about. Hillary Clinton approved the transfer of 20% of U.S. uranium resources to a Russian company, and 9 investors in the deal funneled $145 million to the Clinton Foundation. That sounds like pay for play. Bill Clinton got $500,000 for a Moscow speech paid for by a Kremlin-backed bank while Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. Hillary Clinton campaign chairman's Juul Energy Company got the $35 million from Putin's Rusnano. We mentioned that one just a little while ago. Senior staffers inside Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign were warned by Clinton Foundation Senior Vice President Maura Pally that the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Senator Charles Grassley, was asking the Department of Justice to investigate State Department approval of the sale of that uranium assets to that Russian company. And they were working to get that derailed. Hillary Clinton hid $2.35 million in secret donations from Ian Telfer, the head of Russia's uranium company. It was a stinky, stinky deal. But nobody wants to investigate that. We just want to talk about Donald Trump and the 2 hookers in the Moscow hotel. That's a horrible, horrible thing here. All right, we're going to take another phone call. Sandra in Texas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, I missed your show yesterday. My day just didn't feel complete without your show.
Well, we had an upset when our RBN's internet connection went down. We did in fact pick up the show and complete it, getting into the second hour, but I guess we didn't get all of our audience back.
Oh, okay. Well, I was calling about the fight to court. Yesterday on Fox and Friends, Judge Napolitano was interviewed. It was March 7th, and it was about, if you go on YouTube, the full show, it's about at 28 minutes. And it was very interesting. According to Judge Napolitano, it's specifically stated in the FISA statute that the President of the United States has full authority to conduct espionage on anyone that he chooses, and it's perfectly legal, although he did say he personally believes it's unconstitutional. He said it's perfectly legal and that all the president has to do is file a certification with the Department of Justice.
And the Attorney General, Loretta Lynch. All right. I will respond to this when we come back from these commercials. Thank you for the phone call. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And in response to Sandra's phone call here, FISA stands for the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. And the emphasis is on the word foreign because Judge Napolitano is correct. It is unconstitutional, a violation of the Fourth Amendment for the U.S. government to surveil an American citizen without having evidence of wrongdoing. And that's why it's called the Foreign Intelligence Court. They are limited to allowing surveillance on people outside the United States of America. Now, if the people outside the United States of America are calling into the United States of America, then obviously by default that American is caught up in the phone call. But it is foreign. And they are not allowed to just start peeking at people inside this country. It is a violation of the Constitution. And you need to remember that. The FISA authority does not extend inside the borders. It is unconstitutional. And if you go back to the United States Supreme Court decision, Marbury versus Madison, laws repugnant to the Constitution are automatically null and void. We do not need to wait for somebody on the Supreme Court to tell us whether something is constitutional or not. We're allowed to decide for ourselves. In fact, nowhere in the Constitution is the Supreme Court given the ultimate authority to decide what is or is not constitutional. Marbury versus Madison says it's up to us to decide. Anyway. Now, journalist Cheryl Atkinson, who is one of the good guys, been out there just abused by her corporate media employers, is basically warning that a lot of what we're seeing in the corporate media in terms of protests, counter-protests, and the rest of it are what's called astroturf. They're not really grassroots movement. They are rent-a-mob crowds that show up in buses. They're paid to be there in order to push a message for a special interest group or a political agenda. And they're used by the corporate media to convince you that your fellow Americans think this is really a really good idea to go along with. Now, one of these rent-a-mobs was arrested. Some of these people were arrested for felony rioting for disrupting a pro-Trump rally in Minnesota. They got their brown shirts on and their armbands, and they went on out there and said, we're going to break up this rally so that the Führer can rule the country here. And they bagged Linwood Kaine, the youngest son of Hillary Clinton's running mate, Tim Kaine. And he's arrested on suspicion of felony rioting near the Minnesota State Capitol building. Real brown shirt tactics out there. Now, there's an interesting story over at townhall.com, and it's asking the question a lot of people have been asking. Why is the corporate media ignoring Trump's sex trafficking arrests? Now, Trump came on out and had a press conference, met with a bunch of people who are familiar with this problem, and said, we're going to do something about it. And they are. There have been huge numbers of arrests, these child sex trafficking rings being broken up. And it's not getting any coverage whatsoever. One has to wonder why. Whose ox is being gored on this one? And so I posted a link as a flashback to the Franklin cover-up scandal. This was a child sex ring scandal that went all the way to the Bush and Reagan White House itself. And there was even a Discovery Channel documentary made about it, called Conspiracy of Silence. And this child sex ring involved Boys Town, the world-famous orphanage. They made movies about this place. And Discovery Channel had this documentary. They were about to go to air, and they were approached by members of Congress who said, if you air this, we will pass laws that will make it impossible for you to stay in business. And Discovery knuckled under. They pulled it from broadcast, even though it was already in the TV guide. And then an unknown anonymous party purchased all the rights to the documentary, and all the VHS copies that were going to be for sale disappeared and were destroyed. Fortunately, somebody found an editing work tape and turned it over to a member of Congress who was investigating, and that tape is linked to the page on the Franklin scandal. So it's beginning to look like, yeah, a lot of very high-ranking Republicans and Democrats may be caught up in this thing. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. Now, when it comes to this issue of sexual abuse of children, we know that within the clergy, even though the scandal has been made public and there have been horrendous lawsuits, the problem persists to the present day. They can't get it under control. We know from the Franklin scandal that at one point there was a serious issue of child sex trafficking within the highest reaches of our federal government. It went all the way to the Bush and Reagan White House. And based on the performance of the church, there's no reason to think that problem has gone away, especially when you look at what was going on down at Jeffrey Epstein's island. Now, I still think that the specific Pizzagate story was a setup to head off a more generalized inquiry and set people up for lawsuits like, unfortunately, Alex Jones is having to deal with right now. But the problem itself is definitely very, very real. And these people will do anything to protect their secrets. The Discovery Channel found that out the hard way. All right, let's take a phone call. Mark in North Carolina, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, how you doing, Mike? Mike, something very interesting about this. I was listening at, you know, Robert David Steele, right?
Yes.
Former CIA, good CIA guy, though. Was on Alex Jones, and I've seen a couple other internet show on YouTube and all. And he thinks, he doesn't think, he seems to have information that the firing of General Flynn has to do with pedophile investigations. That Flynn has information. He said that not Vice President Pence himself, but Pence is one of his best friends. And I'm not sure if he's a politician himself or not. I think he's a politician, a congressman or a senator or something like that, is actually involved in pedophilic behavior, and Flynn has information on that. Now, again, I'm just telling you what he says.
Well, that sounds a little too convenient. The story that we're hearing is that Flynn was basically trying to hijack the war policy of the Trump administration and was calling for an unprovoked attack on Iran. But at this point, nothing can be ruled out. But I do want to make a point here. Pedophiles, by nature of who they are and what they do, don't tend to share that with anybody they don't think is going to be another pedophile. And there's this communication network and everything that's going on. The fact that somebody that Mike Pence knows is engaged in this kind of vile behavior doesn't necessarily mean Mike Pence himself knows that was going on. And that's why I'm saying this is kind of a weak case. But we
didn't actually say that Pence knows what's going on.
Well, then why would what Mike Flynn have any kind of be any kind of a threat?
Well, maybe, I don't know if he was consider him a threat, or just, you know, maybe he thinks he doesn't know what he's talking about, and his friend of his is, you know, never did anything. You know, I don't know what goes on in these people's minds, Mike. All right, these politicians, like I said, they're different. Their thinking process seem to be different than yours and mine.
Let me do a what if here. If you were somebody who was aware of the pedophilia going on and you just had your career in public life destroyed, what's your best way to get your revenge? So looking for what should be there and isn't, I would expect there to be some kind of a revelation following Flynn's resignation that thus and such within that circle of people were engaged in this kind of behavior. But we're not seeing it. But I think there's no question that there are highly placed people within government and within the media. Look at the problem the BBC is dealing with some of their top people who are engaged in this kind of behavior. And maybe the same thing is true of America's corporate media, which is why they don't want to touch this story.
And by the way, you're not talking about the BBC and all that in England. David Icke, you may think, is a little strange because, you know, his thing about the reptilian human hybrid.
I disagree with him on that one.
But he is a former mainstream reporter. He knows a lot of stuff. He's the one who called it out on Edward Heath years ago that he's a pedophile, and he swears up and down that the whole Bush family, especially H.W. and W. and all these other are nothing, and Jeb are nothing but pedophiles. And by the way, Roger Stone's book about the Bush is kind of like into that. Matter of fact, he talks about the Franklin scandal and how the Bushes were right at the center of that.
Again, the fact that, you know, the Franklin scandal did link to the Reagan-Bush White House, but the indications are that it had nothing to do with Reagan. I don't understand what's going on. Maybe it's just the thrill of doing something vile and getting away with it. Maybe these are people who always get what they want in terms of money and power and wealth, and they're so bored they have to do something like this to get their adrenaline going. I really am strongly interested in learning what motivates it. I do find it to be very, very vile, disgusting behavior. And if they are engaged in it, it should come on out, because, as I said earlier in the show, the American people have a legitimate right to know exactly what kind of individuals form the power elite. And if they're out there diddling little children in the dark closets, we have a right to know that as well. Anyway, Mark, we're going to let you real quick, because we're falling behind.
I know you don't have really religious beliefs.
No.
But the fact of the matter is, they do. They believe in state. They go to these satanic rites, including Bohemian Grove. They believe in it. That's why I believe they're out and out evil. And what is more evil than being a pedophile? That's about all I got to say about that. Okay.
All right. Well, it's a legitimate point here, but I don't know that these people are necessarily true-believing Satanists. They may just be going along because they want to be seen with these other individuals who are doing the same thing. Just like there are a lot of politicians who make a pretense of going to Christian churches, and yet certainly in their private lives they do not act like they're Christians. Mark, we're going to let you go. Switch over to George in Texas. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mark. I hope you guys are blaming the Russians for the snow caps on your mountains.
Yeah. Well, you know, we were blaming the Russians for the RBN net outage, and I got to tell you right now, I'm going to skip on down because I need to get this out here today. There's an organization called MEMRI, M-E-M-R-I, the Middle East Media Research Institute. They are a known Israeli propaganda front, and they were the ones who came on out and said that Ahmadinejad said he was going to wipe Israel off the map, which, as it turned out, wasn't what he was going to be saying. Right now, MEMRI is running a story saying that Russia is planting nuclear mole missiles along the U.S. shorelines in order to be able to deliver a virtually instantaneous nuclear strike. And the Russian government, of course, is already saying this is complete and utter nonsense. But at this point, it looks like our deep state is in such a panic over the loss of their power and authority that they're going to try and get a major war going in this hope, this faith that if there's a real bloody war out there, that we, the American people, will forget all about the NSA and CIA spying, we'll forget all about the politics and corruption, this attempts to steal the election, and all the rest of it. We'll throw a snappy salute at the flag, and we'll fling our money and our children into the war. Not going to happen, for reasons that Sun Tzu made abundantly clear in The Art of War. For a ruler to have a successful war, their military must believe in the moral rightness of the war so that they will fight fiercely and, if necessary, die. And the civilians must believe in the moral rightness of the war so that they will bear the hardships that war brings, even to the victorious side. Our government has neither one. But it seems like right now our future is going to be determined by whichever one of our leaders is the least mentally stable. And frankly, we need a warehouse of straitjackets right now for our current leadership.
But anyway, here in good news, where I used to live in Florida, a law firm, since all these pedophile arrests started going around the prisons, interviewing the former foster children of the system that are in the prison system.
Mm-hmm.
And they're getting descriptions of, like, birthmarks, and it's some pretty high prominent people. And this law firm, when the time is right, when there's convictions, they're going to they're going to move for, suing the state and getting reparations for these people in the foster care system that have been.
I bet you that law firm gets broken into and its files burned and its computers stolen, or the whole building will burn to the ground. George, I'm going to let you go, and as a matter of fact, we're going to not take any more pedophilia phone calls because we're falling behind on the talking points. We got a lot of stuff that we need to cover. Take a phone call from Ralph in New York. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike. I just want to ask your opinion. What's your opinion today on this Women's Day march all over New York City, Trump Tower, and Washington, D.C.?
Who cares?
And what's your opinion on all this?
Who cares?
Your opinion on this one?
Who cares? That's my opinion. Who cares? It's a bunch of women who said we're not going to go to work today, and some of them are probably going to lose their jobs because of it. In fact, there was one Twitter post on this very subject from a woman who said, I'm going to work today because I own the company and I started it, and I have a lot of women employees, and if they don't show up, they're going to be out of work.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And again, also with the wiretapping in Trump Tower, also with Trump against Obama. What's your view on this one? What's the outcome on this one?
Well, I'm hoping the outcome is going to be Watergate 2. Full investigation followed by somebody's arrest and imprisonment. But Obama's people are trying to find some way they can say this was legally justified on the basis of our guess, our wild guess, that Russia and Trump were working together, and therefore we were justified in bugging his campaign headquarters and sharing that information with Hillary's campaign headquarters. And that, of course, is complete and utter nonsense.
Yeah, and the Nancy Pelosi, she's going crazy, too, going bonkers. She doesn't know where she's at.
Yeah, Nancy is starting to show signs of dementia, so's Maxine Waters. And you look at people like Maxine Waters and Nancy Pelosi and John McCain, and you begin to realize that obviously election...
Chucky Schumer.
Chucky Schumer, too. You begin to realize that election fraud is not confined just to the presidential elections.
Oh, my God. It's sickening every day, seeing all this fake news, and Alex Jones is going bonkers, too, every day on his show. He doesn't know what's going to be outcome now. The CIA scandal and the WikiLeaks. What's the scandal with this one now? Where that's going to come from?
Well, the scandal is, this reinforces everything Edward Snowden was telling us, and it's already been declared as far more damaging than everything Edward Snowden put out, because Edward Snowden mostly described what the NSA was doing, and he backed it up with documents and presentations and everything. This dump is putting out specifics, the specific tools the CIA has developed, the specific things they're able to do, like remote control cars and so forth. And it is extremely alarming, and all the intelligence community can say is, oh, come on, you people, you're just being fussy. It's no big deal. But I think where most people are going to be very, very furious is where, first of all, Hayden is out there saying we're not mass spying on all Americans, we're only looking after a few bad people, and yet the CIA has rendered our computers and our electronics wide open to cyber crime, and now they're telling us it was for no real good purpose at all.
Wow. Now that's why they're coming out with the driverless cars. They're coming around the corner very soon in the near future, right? That's going to put millions of people out of work, especially cab drivers, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be now the Google car's already out. That's not even perfected. You heard about that?
I'm sorry, what was that one more time?
The Google cars. They have out in Southern California these Google cars doing testings on the future of driverless cars. Are you aware about that?
Oh yeah, I've been hearing about that. The Tesla 3 is apparently doing well. They've only had one bad accident with that one. Personally, I don't want a driverless car. I enjoy driving. And I don't want that taken away from me. But my gut is telling me that driverless cars are going to be kind of like 3D TV and 4K TV. It's going to be a passing fad.
Wow, but that's going to take. Do you think that's going to be taking away jobs from people when the driverless cars economy comes into effect?
Well, I think the one area where driverless vehicles are going to be taking away jobs is the long-haul cargo truck drivers. In fact, there's already talk that the United States does not need to invest in reviving its rail transport system. They can just go to driverless semi-trucks and just program them to go down the highways. The problem is the highways are also crumbling. So I see that as kind of wishful thinking on that one. Anyway,
they have to invest and they have to invest trillions. That's what Donald Trump wants to invest massive infrastructure building. That's the agenda he wants to try to do, right?
Yeah, but unfortunately, Yellen is talking about a rate hike, which is going to make the interest on that prohibitively expensive. Now, Trump, of course, can invoke his authority as president and issue an interest-free currency to fund his infrastructure development. They used to actually have that system up in Canada. Unfortunately, back in the 1970s, the Canadian government abandoned the interest-free loans provided by Canada's central bank and started borrowing money for infrastructure development from private central banks, regular banks, and sticking the Canadian people with those interest payments. Anyway, going to have to let you go. Coming up on a commercial break, coming up on the top of the hour. And we have a lot of stuff to get into in terms of the war zones here. Now, we've been hearing that there are military forces that are going into Syria. And as it turns out, what's going on is that Trump is apparently concerned that Turkey is pushing too far into Syria, not only into Syria itself, but the Kurdish regions, and apparently these U.S. forces are being deployed to basically create a fence and send a message to Erdogan, this far and no farther shall you go. So that appears to be what's going on over there. It does not look like Trump has changed his mind about going in and getting Assad out, even though many people around him are still lobbying for that to happen. Now, the foreign minister of Turkey, Mevlut Cavusoglu, is accusing Berlin of putting pressure on German-based Turks in order to try and influence the upcoming referendum that may dramatically increase the presidential powers in Turkey. Erdogan has a new referendum coming on up. If it passes, he will be granted far more powers and authority, kind of like the Nazis' enabling acts or some of the stuff we've been seeing in this country. And apparently Germany is being accused of approaching Turks who are living in Germany and saying, you should write home and say XYZ. Not a lot of support behind the allegation, but that's what Turkey is accusing Germany of doing. It's easy to make an accusation, unfortunately. Now, Netanyahu, actually, we're going to come up on a commercial break here. And when we come on back, more about the international scene after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And we're going to be talking about Syria now. Benjamin Netanyahu is out there demanding an immediate summit with Vladimir Putin. And apparently he's very upset because Israel's agenda in Syria, in particular permanent ownership of the Golan, have been pretty much thwarted. And Israel tried to bait Russia into making a move that would have allowed the U.S. to escalate that war. And apparently Israeli fighter jets deliberately flew over Lebanon's Arsal Barrens, where Al-Qaeda and ISIS are headquartered, then proceeded further on in and dropped their bombs on Syrian army positions inside Syria. And everybody said, why didn't Russia shoot them down with those S-400s? And the reality is Russia didn't need to, because obviously the Syrian government is regaining control of Syria. And Netanyahu is now in a snit. He's very angry. He wants to go up to Russia and demand that Putin allow Israel to have the Golan Heights. But all of these agendas for the Mideast, for the New World Order, they're all in serious, serious trouble. Because we have a better informed general population which knows what's really going on and no longer believes the propaganda coming on out. Now, apparently, Poroshenko is petitioning The Hague to arrest Vladimir Putin. Isn't even saying what it should be for, but apparently that ultranationalist group that started illegally blockading East Ukraine has caused a severe energy shortage, loss of assets and tax revenues. And the ultranationalists are now talking about a direct march on Kiev itself. Poroshenko is convinced that they're neo-Nazis and they're secretly working for Vladimir Putin, and he wants The Hague to arrest Putin. The man is getting desperate. The man is getting desperate. He's on the verge of losing the war. His own people are rebelling against him. If the Minsk agreement is fully implemented, he's out of a job. He's got Saakashvili drooling to be his replacement. It's a mess. Ukraine is a mess. Because the U.S. government decided they were just going to go on in there and overthrow Yushchenko because Yushchenko didn't want to join the European Union. And now they've turned Ukraine into such a mess that the European Union doesn't even want them anymore. Even more alarming, the foreign minister of Ukraine wants a revision of what's called the Budapest Memorandum that dates back to 1994, which established Ukraine as a non-nuclear state. And now they're saying they want to rethink that, and maybe Poroshenko wants to get a few atomic bombs. I'm sure he can buy a couple of them under the table from Israel, the way South Africa did. Meanwhile, we're getting word. Everybody knows the U.S. is spoiling for a fight. And at this point, it almost seems like the United States doesn't care who with. It's amazing how prescient Michael Moore was in the movie Canadian Bacon. We need a war to revive our economy. Who with? Well, I don't know. Canada, maybe. I don't care who the war is with. But Russia and China know they are in the crosshairs, and apparently Russia is now modernizing their anti-nuclear submarines to carry caliber nuclear missiles. We will be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we're hour number 3. Wow, how time flies when you're having fun. We're going to grab a phone call from Alex in Florida. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Not much, Michael. I do have a question. The Vault 7 release that WikiLeaks just released, now, isn't that like phase 1 of Vault 7? Aren't they promising to release a lot more of Vault 7, or is this the only release of Vault 7?
No. WikiLeaks is saying what they've already released is only 1% of what they have, which means they have about 800,000 documents yet to go.
I just have the feeling that there's going to be something big. I think they have something big, and I think that
this is big.
Could be very damaging.
This is big, and it's very damaging. I think you need to lower your expectations. As far as I'm concerned, this delegitimizes the entire U.S. government.
I do agree with you. Maybe I said that incorrectly.
Okay.
Let me just say I think they have something that is humongous, which this is humongous, but I don't know. For some reason, I think they're going to come out with something on 9/11 or something, maybe some evidence, or let me say I hope that they have.
Oh, boy, I would love to see that. I would love to see somebody blow the whistle from inside on high on 9/11. For purely personal reasons, I would like somebody to blow the whistle on the murder of Vince Foster, which is what got me blacklisted out of Hollywood and started me on this path in my life. I would derive a great deal of satisfaction for somebody to come on out and say, yeah, you were right, the FBI lied and covered up the murder of the White House Deputy Counsel, made it look like a suicide. I'm not waiting for it to happen, I'm not holding my breath, but if it were to happen, I'd pop a champagne cork or 2, or 10.
That's right. Well, you know that, I mean, there should be, I mean, I'm sure they've been destroyed, the ones that they know of, but there should be satellite video of, like, the planes flying into the buildings of 9/11, or maybe a missile flying into the Pentagon, or I think there's information out there.
Here's the thing. Most people think satellite imagery of Earth is what they see in Google Earth, where it's just always there and visible. But if you look closely at Google Earth, some of those images that they're using to make that map go back 5 or 6 years. There's a lot of satellite coverage up there in space, but it's not continuous and it's not global. Somebody would have to know to point the satellites at the World Trade Towers at the moment the aircraft were going to impact. Now, certainly after it all happened, there were satellites that were retasked to look at the World Trade Centers, and even the International Space Station took a picture flying over. But I'm not expecting to see any satellite imagery about that. So that's not going to happen. What would be convincing is for somebody to leak out all those videos they confiscated around the Pentagon that clearly show a passenger jet hitting that building, which would prove that all this talk about a missile and no plane at the Pentagon was just propaganda to try and ridicule the issue and make us all go away, which obviously didn't work. Big goof there. Okay.
Now, are you talking about the video, the 2-second clip that the Pentagon released of the supposed plane flying into the Pentagon, or no?
No, there's been no release of a 2-second video of the plane flying into the Pentagon. All we have are the still photos taken from the security cameras at the parking lot, and there are 2 sets of them. One of them was put all over the net and tried to say this proves it was a missile. The second set actually does clearly show the passenger jet, but that one has not gotten a lot of coverage.
Yeah.
You know,
well,
but
like
the FBI went around all the gas stations and stores and everything that were around that side of the Pentagon, and they confiscated all the security camera footage. So somebody has it somewhere.
That's right. I would love for Trump to actually show us where the CIA has evidence that Russia, or supposed evidence that Russia had anything to do with the WikiLeaks and hacking the elections or the election according to Hillary Clinton. I want to see that because I want Hillary Clinton to be questioned on.
There isn't any. In fact, one of the major points of the WikiLeaks exposure is that the CIA has a program that has stolen hacking tools from other countries to allow the United States to hack into computers and frame these other countries for it. And so any claims that Russia's fingerprints were found on the DNC computer hack are basically null and void at this point because you cannot rule out that it was actually being done by Langley as a false flag to frame Russia.
That's right. And it's Hillary Clinton that started that claim that it was Russia. It was Hillary Clinton. We need to bring her little face to the TV screen explaining herself. Why you said that. There's no evidence. Why did you say that?
She'll just say that one of her underlings said it to her, and she trusted and believed him, and then she'll just dump the mess on some small fry. Maybe she'll claim Brian Pagliano told her, and since nobody seems able to find him, that would be the end of that evidence trail.
Yeah, she sucks. She has so many of these Democrats bowing to her. It's pathetic that they believe that garbage that she has spread. It's garbage.
She has been she ran her campaign as a personality cult, just like Jim Jones in Guyana or the founder of Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard. It's a personality cult. And once you have people trapped in a personality cult where they're worshiping that personality, they are oblivious to any facts that don't fit in with that worldview. They're fanatics.
Yeah, it is. It's unbelievable. And the guy that started Rachel Maddow, I forget his name. With MSNBC, and he got let go. He was with ESPN. Oberman.
Yes, Keith Oberman.
The biggest trash on the internet. I can't believe he's there. You think Michael Moore's bad? Oberman's horrible. He has brain dead people believing what he's saying about Russia.
I don't know that his numbers are all that good right now, and of course at this point we can't even really trust the viewership audience numbers of the corporate media because they've already been caught artificially inflating their social media followers, artificially inflating their website clicks. It may be that hardly anybody is still watching them, and they're just maintaining the illusion that they're getting the propaganda out there so that their financial masters don't stop signing those paychecks. Anyway, Alex, I got to let you go. We got a bunch of people waiting on the phone and a lot of news to cover. Lynn in Tennessee, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Like, switch gears here a little bit. In the past, you have many times mentioned that you thought that the mayors and other officials in these sanctuary cities should be charged under Title 8 of the U.S. Code.
Yes.
I looked up the Department of Justice Criminal Resource Manual, and looking over the list of offenses, it seems to me that, what you're saying has a lot of merit. However, I'm not hearing this from many other sources, if any at all. I'm wondering.
Well, we're ahead of the curve.
Well, I'm wondering, and I've been thinking about this for a while. What if a White House petition demanding the arrest and prosecution of these officials were started? And what do you think the effectiveness of such a petition might be?
Well, if they got over the 100,000 signatures, it mandates a response from the White House, and that would put Trump on the spot of either saying, I will enforce the letter of the law, or I'm going to allow these mayors, by virtue of the fact that they are mayors, basically thumb their nose at the immigration law. So by all means, start such a petition, okay?
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. We're going to take one more phone call, then we're going to close the phone lines. Glenn in Philadelphia, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. CNN has taken notice of the format of these day without protests.
Yes?
They're a little tired of the some of the flack they've been taking lately. So in the spirit of letting us know how dependent upon them we are for our knowledge of truth in our daily lives, CNN is mounting on the 13th, Monday, going into a new week, a day without CNN boycott protest. And they're going to run Leave It to Beaver reruns all day and link their webpage to Drudge.
I think that's going to backfire horribly. I was a big fan of Leave It to Beaver. What?
That'll show us how much we really need them.
Yeah, it certainly will. I was a big fan of Leave It to Beaver.
Yeah, that's a good reminder of saner days.
Yes, absolutely. Boy, sanity seems like such a far-off concept right now. And not just sanity, common sense. What happened to just common sense among people? It's just been eroded away with all this liberal political correctness. Keep us all confused and not sure what we think and what we know. It's time for us to just sit down and have a little soul search and say, this is what I think is right, and I'm going to stand by it, and nobody else is going to talk me out of it. Get back our own sense of identity and what we think is moral and right and just, and common sense. That's all I'm asking for. I'm not asking for a lot from you. Just return to common sense. Okay?
Well, we live in a culture of people who have a lot of gut and spine problems. So. All right.
All righty. All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. We're going to close the phone lines for a bit because I'm way behind on the talking points. And, yeah, boy, it's out there. Now then, article that came out of Blacklisted News. It's a follow-up. A while back, there was an article of admitted false flag attacks. And it was a collection of some 44 cases where government officials had admitted there were false flag attacks used to start wars or push some other kind of agenda. This latest entry at Blacklisted News, the list has now grown to over 60. So you need to understand that false flag attacks are a reality. You are controlled with lies, fraud, and deception, and it's always been that way. So this brings us to this current screed where we're being told that North Korea is getting ready to attack Hawaii. And again, looking for what should be there and isn't. I have to wonder why. We have a huge Korean population on this island. And it's true the command control communication for the Pacific Fleet still goes through Pearl Harbor, but all the really major weapons are over at Guam. Now, maybe somebody friendly to the U.S. agenda would flip off a nuclear missile from the Western Pacific that would miss Oahu, but provide a really spectacular mushroom cloud on the far horizon for the tourists to take picture of, and then, oh my goodness, we're off to war with North Korea. And of course, this dovetails with that story that just came out of memory about how Russia is burying nuclear mole missiles along our coastline for a surprise nuclear attack with no warning, which, by the way, I remember reading that in a science fiction book some years ago about how they had a submarine that could just drill a missile silo into the seabed, which is an engineering feat I would like to see. Apparently, 3 members of Osama bin Laden's family have died in a suspicious plane crash. They're claiming the pilot became overwhelmed as he approached Blackbush Airport in Hampshire. And I don't know. It sounds to me suspiciously like wet work. Now remember, Osama bin Laden's older brother, Salam bin Laden, was business partners with George W. Bush in a failed venture called Arbusto Energy. And Salam bin Laden also died in a small plane crash. Now, more and more people are beginning to look back at what happened at Abbottabad and realizing that was not Osama bin Laden who was in that building. And they're wondering what really happened to Osama bin Laden. Well, we all know he died in December of 2001 of, I think it was Marfan syndrome. He was very, very ill. And, of course, all the created bin Ladens since then get younger and younger and healthier and healthier. And even Wikipedia, in their article on Osama bin Laden, they're using one of the faked photos. That isn't really a photo of the real Osama bin Laden. It's one of the manufactured fakes. So maybe these 3 members of the bin Laden family were getting ready to go public and say, yeah, all these modern bin Ladens, Osama bin Ladens, they were all fakes. Wasn't him at Abbottabad. He died of natural causes in December of 2001. But there's a lot of wet work going on, and I fear there'll be a lot more before we're out of this mess here. All right, let's talk about the economic news here. There's some good, some bad. Kind of hard to guess what's going on. Trump's first full month in office brings a massive employment boom. U.S. companies added 298,000 new jobs in February. Now, against a total U.S. unemployment of 90 million, it's a drop in the bucket, but it is significant because it absolutely beat all of the forecasts and predictions by almost double. And that's got everybody just saying, oh, something's definitely going on here. Now, somebody who's enjoying a bit of a boom is Ivanka Trump. Now, remember when Donald Trump won the presidency and all of a sudden all these liberal-owned department stores like Nordstrom said, we're dropping the Ivanka Trump line. It's poor sales. We're putting her on the closeout bin, and you'll have to just look for it in the racks here. And apparently people did. Because apparently Ivanka Trump's line sales skyrocketed in February. They broke records. And all those stores that threw her line out are not enjoying that economic success. So I have a recommendation to the stockholders of places like Nordstrom that dropped Ivanka. That next board of directors election, you might want to remind those executives they are there to make profits for you, the stockholder, not political statements that harm the profits of the stockholders. Money talks and politics walks should be the new rule in all of these economic endeavors. Now, a lot of people are talking about the Dow euphoria. This is over at deviantinvestor.com. And they're talking about how, once again, we're seeing the stock market being driven up by the extreme low cost of borrowing money from the Federal Reserve. And people are borrowing money at low cost. They're putting it in the stock market. They're waiting for the stock market to go up. They sell the stock. They pay back the loan plus the low interest, and they make a profit. It's pure rank speculation. The problem is, if Yellen does raise the rates, it's all going to come crashing down. They really are between a rock and a hard place. Now, purely for the benefit of the economy, Yellen should keep the rates down, but we know politics is now involved. And one of the ways that Trump's enemies would like to derail him is to raise the cost of borrowing to derail his infrastructure improvement plan. Because Donald Trump has come into office with a serious, serious problem. He's got all these things he wants to do for the American people and no money to do it with. Because the American people are broke, they're taxed into poverty, and all the money has been spent on war and Israel and Obamacare and the refugees and the illegal immigrants. Now, the first quarter gross domestic product is basically at 1.2%. That's the current estimate. And that's a slash down from 1.8%. At the first of the year, they were forecasting 3%, and still they're talking about a rate hike. And that further reinforces that there are considerations other than the economy at work in Janet Yellen's mind. Mexico has canceled sugar export permits to the United States in a trade dispute fueled by the immigration wall. And boy, what a shame we here in Hawaii shut down so many of our sugar mills, because we sure could have benefited from the United States needing to buy our sugar again. But water under the bridge, or sugar cane under the thresher. Got to take a break for commercials. We will be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And the German economy is dealing with a crisis over there. Their automakers are getting into the same degree of difficulty as American automakers. They're producing cars. Nobody's buying them. You cannot expect the people of a nation to buy the products that are for sale if you will not let them trade their labor for decent wages and salaries. And I do not understand this mindset in the United States where these money junkies are out there screaming about, driving down wages and salaries, and then they stand around wondering why nobody's showing up at their stores and restaurants to buy things. We need to return to that common sense approach to the economy that we had in Henry Ford. The best way to become prosperous is to make your community prosper around you. Henry Ford paid the workers at his car factory enough where they could afford to buy the cars they were building, and that became his best advertisement. It really was a car for the working class. So over in Germany, their factory orders have hit the lowest level since 2009. It's all locking up. Now, Marine Le Pen is out there already talking about what she's going to do after winning the French presidency, which, short of a coup d'etat or an assassination, seems highly certain at this point. And she is saying that France will reintroduce the franc. France will have their own indigenous currency, the franc, back again. It will be issued at the rate of 1 franc to 1 euro to avoid any kind of economic shock. Remember, Berlusconi was out there saying Italy should bring back the lira right now to operate in parallel with the euro because of the severe possibility that the European Union is going to collapse and that euro from the European Central Bank is going to be worthless. Sure, there'll be collector's items. There's now growing concern that the European Union's most recent Greek bailout may have been illegal, which would hardly be surprising. Half of Greece's debt was created illegally in this underhanded deal between Papandreou and Goldman Sachs. But Christine Lagarde says, debt is holy, debt is sacrosanct. We don't care if your government created the debt through fraud. You, the people, are slaves to it for eternity. Sorry, got carried away there. And apparently there's a concern raised over the coercion and arm twisting that was going on with the government of Greece to get them to go along with this. And this latest Greek deal has resulted in violent protests in Greece. And right now, Greek farmers are clashing with police in central Athens in this protest against increased taxes, reduced pensions, and all of the other problems with this multi-million euro bailout, which is just another loan. And Greece's creditors are now openly talking about privatization of Greece's ancient heritage. Gee, wouldn't that Parthenon look great out front of that casino out there in Las Vegas? Remember when that land development in Las Vegas bought the London Bridge? And after it was already over there and installed, they realized they'd made a mistake because what they thought they were buying was the Tower Bridge. But Tower Bridge is called Tower Bridge. London Bridge, made famous in song, London Bridge is falling down, is actually a much more modest structure. A little bit of a goof on that one here. The refugee situation is still not looking any better. Apparently a Muslim asylum seeker has been imprisoned for life for killing his landlady in Germany because she was an infidel. Well, at least he doesn't have to worry about being deported back home. He's got a home for life now there in Germany. Apparently in Sweden, PC Sweden, there are no rapes, there are no problems. Apparently Muslim migrant teens raped a 14-year-old girl at school. They've been allowed to remain in the school. She, on the other hand, has been transferred to another school. She's the one who got punished for what happened. This is PC gone crazy, PC gone wild. Another migrants have been arrested, Lebanon, as they hurl rocks at the police. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, apparently, over at the University of Michigan, there is this white student, a woman, and apparently she had fabricated a story about a strange man scratching her face back on November 15th. And she claimed that her attack was part of a surge in hate crimes following the election of Donald Trump. And she claimed she was targeted for wearing a solidarity pin connected to the Brexit vote. And as it turns on out, she made it all up. And she's now pled guilty to one count of false reporting of a misdemeanor. And it is a reminder that a lot of people are engaging in hoaxes and fraud against you, the American people. And you must be on your guard all the time. Caveat emptor. Let the buyer beware. And I'll give you another example, because a story was just posted to my website from Investment Watch blog. And it's talking about a poll that was conducted on the 1st and 2nd of last year, December last year, which showed that ABC, CBS, the New York Times, and CNN were among the most credible news sources in the U.S., and news sources that were deemed to be not credible were places like Breitbart and InfoWars. See, the corporate media is still trusted. We have the American people. Until you go into the raw data and you find out that the vast majority of people being polled were female Democrats, self-described liberals, suburbanites, no military background, who voted for Barack Obama. That's hardly a representative sample of the American people. So now they're faking the polls to protect their own reputations in the corporate media, just like they were faking the polls to claim that Hillary was winning in a landslide and Donald Trump could never possibly be President of the United States of America. So if at first you don't succeed, lie again, and that's exactly what's going on there. Getting on back to frauds, we're still finding out more and more about this guy who was phoning in these bomb threats to these Jewish centers, and supposedly he did it to annoy his former girlfriend. Now we're finding out this guy is actually pro-Israel, spoke favorably about Israel, had lots of Jewish friends. His ex-girlfriend was Jewish, and again, it was another hoax. It was another hoax. Now, over in Europe, Brexit negotiator Guy Verhofstadt is out there screaming that nationalism is a disease, and it's sweeping across Europe. It's a disease for people to want their own countries. If you're anyone not willing to be the slave of the globalists is obviously mentally ill, and we should send them to the gulags. How Stalin-esque of him. No, we're not mentally ill. We're looking at how all of this empire building has adversely impacted on Europe, how it's adversely impacting on the United States of America. We're employing our common sense, and common sense is not a mental illness. Part of it, I think, is these globalists are caught up in their own dreams of glory. They think it's so exciting that we're going to have a one-world government and a one-world private central bank, and they just can't comprehend that anybody wouldn't be just as much in love with this as they are. But again, if you go back and you look at empires, they're always built at a cost. Everyone looks at Emperor Qin Huangdi, the first emperor of United China, the guy who brought all these little areas together into China. He's got this magnificent tomb. terracotta army. They're still not going into the tomb yet. They're not sure what they're going to find in there. I hope they do while I'm still alive. I'd love to see what's in there. But when you read the history of how he accomplished what he did, a lot of Chinese people suffered horribly and died. When you look at the Great Wall of China, you see the bricks on the outside. What you don't see on the inside are all the bones of the workers who died working on that wall. Everyone talks about Alexander the Great. He was a conqueror. He built this gigantic empire. Yeah, and for Alexander and his generals, it was a pretty good deal. And all the people that were conquered, they didn't do very well. Look at the Roman Empire. Rome was great up until the end. But all those conquered provinces had to work hard and turn their wealth over to Rome. And that's what we're looking at. We're looking at history and realizing that all these empires are always a raw deal for ordinary people who just want to be left alone, to work, to enjoy the fruits of their work, to take care of their family. That's it. That's all we want. We'll be happy if you just let us have that. The empire builders, they want control. They want to control what you think. They want to control what your children eat at lunch. They want to control what medicines you take, what medicines you don't take. Along with money junkyism, there's power junkyism. A desire to own and control absolutely everything down to a minute degree. And it's always a horrible, horrible deal for those on the losing end of that equation here. Now, Nigel Farage is out there in Great Britain demanding a new referendum, and no, this is not a rehash of Brexit. He's actually saying it's time for the British people to decide if they want to go on having a House of Lords in Parliament. That would be the equivalent of the Senate here in our system of government, because the House of Lords has been opposing the will of the British voters all along, trying to find some way to derail the Brexit. And we look at some of the occupants of our Senate, like John McCain, there may in fact be merit to that idea of taking away from the ultra-rich and powerful a disproportionate share of authority within the government. So that's Nigel Farage's situation. As you know, during Secretary of Education DeVos' confirmation, Senator Al Franken, and I have a problem with him because when he was a comedian and he told a joke, we'd all laugh. Now that he's in the Senate and he tells a joke, it's a law. And Franken went after DeVos' lack of experience with public schools. And of course, Al Franken is opposed to school choice. He's opposed to the voucher system. He thinks everybody should go through the Common Core public schools. Turns out he himself never did that. He was sent to private school, one of the most exclusive private schools in the Minneapolis area, $30,000 per year, and that was back when Franklin was young. So it's okay for people like Al Franken to go to private school and get a really good education, but you serfs, you hoi polloi, you're going to go to Common Core, you're going to get your brainwashing, you're going to get your Michelle Obama lunches, thankfully that's going away, and learn how to be the great proletariat. Now, yesterday I mentioned briefly there's a new virtual currency out called Cloak Coin, and already it has been targeted by hackers. If you are going to avail yourself of this system, and I'm not making a recommendation one way or the other, but apparently the wallet software is now available for multiple download sites. And you should get it only from cloakcoin.com because apparently the versions being offered at other download sites come with built-in malware. In fact, that should be a general rule of thumb for anything that you're getting off of the Internet. When you do a search for something like the Adobe Reader, you'll get links to the Adobe website, and you'll get links to these other, we're a convenient downloading service, we'll provide all this stuff for you. And you should go to the source. Go to the people who actually make it, download it from them. Because a lot of software that is out there is being hacked based on WikiLeaks revelations, probably by the CIA itself. And we were talking about this tool that the CIA has developed where they will plug a USB drive into your computer and it will infect already installed, cleared by your antivirus software. And of course, another aspect of the WikiLeaks exposure is that all of the major antivirus malware software is rigged to ignore what the CIA is doing. The problem with that is the cyber criminals will find that out. How does the CIA's malware avoid detection by the antivirus? Well, we'll just craft our software to fit that same model. This actually happened with one of the earlier government malwares from the FBI called Magic Lantern, which was supposed to illuminate the dark recesses of your computer for the benefit of the FBI. And there was an agreement with the various antivirus companies that they were not going to report the presence of Magic Lantern. What happened? The cyber criminals took apart Magic Lantern and started making malware versions that would slip through the existing doorway for the FBI's version. And apparently the fact that all of our computers are now wide open to criminals is of zero concern to the U.S. government as long as they retain the option to peek into your private little world, steal your business secrets for their cronies, steal naked pictures of your significant other, or worse, your children, to amuse themselves with. This doesn't sound like a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. It sounds like a government by the spooks, of the spooks, and for the spooks. Now, Britain is now looking at their digital economy bill, which, like the EU itself, started out as one thing and then turned into something else. The digital economy bill was originally intended to be a platform for a more ambitious country in delivering ultra-fast broadband and mobile networks. Instead, the digital economy bill has imposed all kinds of restrictions, mandatory age verification practices for porn websites, which can be evaded through fraud, giving the government inappropriate and unfettered powers to share citizen data across the public sector. In other words, to gather up information and sell it to advertisers, to end any semblance of privacy, and basically strangle free speech. Do you get a sense that these governments are very much afraid of we the people? Because I can smell the panic on the Potomac all the way out here in Oahu. Apparently, Western Digital has a hardware product. It's a disk drive in a standalone case. It's called My Cloud. It's your own personal cloud server. And apparently it has been found to be easily hijacked from outside the Internet. Apparently it turns out it's very easy to get into the internal administrative web server. That's the little part that when you log in to this remote device, you get a little web page with all your controls. Routers have them, switches have them, and these external drives now have them. And apparently it can be gotten into, and the attacker can upload files, download files, plant child porn to get you arrested. And so Western Digital is working on patches, but until the patches are available, you might want to consider air-gapping that unit when you're not actually using it. Now then, a lot of the security certificates on websites are still using what's called the SHA-1 hash algorithm. Roughly 20% of websites still use it, but apparently it too is easy to spoof, and more companies are saying they're not going to accept security certificates from anybody who is still using that hash algorithm, including Google, Microsoft, and Mozilla. Now, everyone's always concerned about security certificates, and there is a reason. But it's an issue primarily for websites that are asking you for things like credit card information and financial data. Other websites like these are my cookie recipes, or my car sucks, or my stuff sucks, or like the website I crafted for Claire's Choir for the singers throwing their music on. It doesn't need a security certificate because it's just out there shoving information out. Nobody puts anything in. But if you are running a website that does traffic in financial information, private personal information of your users, you do need to have a security certificate with one of the newer hashing algorithms, or you're going to start finding some browsers are not going to allow access to your site. Now, one of the nastiest pieces of malware that's actually coming from the Google Play Store masks as a tool to download and save content from YouTube. This kind of functionality is one of the most hacked, malware-prone tools you can get, whether it's for the smartphone or the desktop. Tools that say, we will help you save local copies of files from YouTube are very often harbingers of malware. In this one, it's called Hidad BZ, and basically what it is, it installs an ad server on your device. And then it tells you that if you do not give this app 5 stars at the Google Play Store, you will get even more ads than you're getting now. So it's basically extortion, where they're saying, we're going to give you ads, you can't turn it off unless you delete the application, and you can't complain to Google Play Store, or we'll fill up your phone with 5 times as many ads. I have to be very honest. Many years ago, in the early days of computer animation, I worked in advertising because only TV commercials had the money to afford the $1 per running second of computer animation. And even back then it was a little slimy, but there were rules that advertisers followed. Some of them were rooted in common sense. You don't annoy your audience or they're going to turn off the message. Today's online advertisers seem to have forgotten all those lessons that were learned through trial and error through the early history of advertising. If I could find an angel to cover the cost of running this operation, I would be delighted to get rid of my advertisers, because some of them are abusive, intrusive, some have tried to foist malware on our readers, and I've got enough of a workload without having to constantly be looking over the shoulder and double-checking that my advertisers aren't changing things to take advantage of our readers. But in the end, any advertiser who annoys or angers the people they're pitching to, they've already lost the sale for their end client. And the end clients need to start looking at that and stop hiring ad agencies and ad providers that use these kind of aggressive, abusive tactics, because they're not going to get a sales return for their advertising dollar on that. All right, we're coming up here on a commercial break. We're going to be back with the last segment of our show today after these few words from our sponsors. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here, and I'm going to spend this last segment sort of recapping on the revelations from WikiLeaks' CIA data dump, which, taken together with Edward Snowden's revelations about the NSA, are basically waking Americans up to the fact that almost everything in our life has been turned into an asset for the government to use against us. Our computers, our TV sets, our tablets, our cell phones. There's the OnStar system in every new car where they could turn on the microphone, listen to you on that. There are those supermarket discount cards that track all of your purchases for a central database. Now, I'm not a Luddite, but I'm thinking that we could actually see a serious backlash here. You've probably all heard the word sabotage, right? And it actually came from a worker revolt against automated knitting machines. When they were first starting to bring these large steam-powered knitting machines to make cloth with, and it put a lot of cloth makers out of work. And what they would do is take their shoes off and throw them into the works to break the needles. Now, in France, a shoe is called sabot, hence the word sabotage. Now, in this office, obviously, I have a lot of computer equipment. Outside of this office, I'm kind of walking away from it. I no longer have a computerized coffee maker. Thankfully, my Samsung TV is so old it does not have a microphone, and to be honest, Claire and I don't really talk about anything that interesting to anybody but Claire and myself. But there is a principle involved, and it's called that Fourth Amendment. The U.S. government is acting illegally, unconstitutionally, and illegitimately, and every American needs to start recognizing that. It's time for a zero-tolerance policy. If the federal government is not 100% in compliance with that Constitution and that Bill of Rights, They are not the legal government of this land. They are usurpers. They are conquerors. They are tyrants. They are dictators. And now we are all starting to see it. Faction fights are breaking into open public view. The justice system is discrediting itself with its rulings on immigration and its free pass to Hillary Clinton's Title 18 violations. I really do see very strong parallels between what is going on in the United States today and events in the former Soviet Union in the months leading up to its complete collapse. So, whether we're going to have a Soviet collapse or a civil war in the streets, or if they're going to start a real world war that this nation ultimately will lose, we're looking at some very challenging times ahead. Talk to each other, real world. Start reestablishing a sense of community with your friends and neighbors, because you're going to need it for the coming months. There's the music. Time for me to get on out of here and get something useful done this afternoon. We'll be back tomorrow here on the Republic Broadcasting Network. The Lady Claire is promising she'll be here in hour number 3 of Friday. So until tomorrow, stay informed, stay skeptical, make good choices, share what you know with everybody that you know. Take all these stories about the CIA WikiLeaks files and Obama spying on Trump and just spread them all over social media and your email. We've got to keep pushing on this story until we force the corporate media and the government to deal with this. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.